promoting products or services to documenting processes, content is crucial at every stage of your business. Yet, content management across multiple platforms and applications can be very complex due to its, of course, variety of formats and lack of centralization, not to mention the time it takes to find information buried within documents and spreadsheets. With AI-driven retrieval augmented generation systems and metadata, you locate information easily while getting personalized content recommendations based on a history, a process which is known as content discovery. Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Analytics Insight podcast where we explore the intersection of technology, strategy and innovation, and I'm your host Priya Dayalani. Now, we are in an age where content is exploding across platforms: news, video, audio, blogs, socials, you name it. And with this explosion comes the need for media intelligence platforms that can help businesses, journalists, analysts, marketers, and even governments make sense of all of it. But the real challenge is sifting through the noise to find what really matters and then making that information actionable, personalized, and timely. So, how do CTOs, those leading the technology roadmap, can approach this challenge? Let's welcome Phanimohan Kalagara, Chief Technology Officer at Gracenote. Hi, Phani, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to be part of this. Really appreciate it.
Great. It's a pleasure to have you with us on our podcast today, Funny. And I'm sure if you're okay, I'm calling you as Funny and not as Funny.
Oh, that's absolutely good. That's how I'm usually called.
Great. So, of course, we are going to discuss a very, unusual and the least discussed topic is the media intelligence platform and what kind of role it is playing in today's digital era. But before, we dive deeper into our agenda and theme today, we would like to know more about Gracenote. So, if you could help us understand more about the company, its specialization, or any particular solution the company is offering, it would be great.
No, absolutely. Gracenote is actually, so you take video, you take audio, you take sports, a good amount of content discovery across the world. In fact, when I say across the world, it is actually across the world, happens supported by Gracenote, whether it is content on Google, whether it is content on Amazon, whether it is content on an MVPD, whether you are actually kind of streaming it through a Roku, whether you are streaming it through an LG Smart TV, it doesn't matter. In the back, more often than not, Gracenote is actually supporting the content information and the content discovery process for all of these players in the ecosystem. On the audio front, also, especially more so in North America, most of content identification, like I think even if you're listening on a radio, which song are you listening to, all the details associated with it, and all of that actually through some very amazing technology, Gracenote powers all of that aspect of it kind of in the audio, auto intersection aspects of things as well. And then on the sports, in addition to actually content discovery, I think we also play into, I think people follow sports, right? I think it's common, they follow commentary, they follow score boxes, they follow so much that actually kind of is associated with sports, right? And Gracenote powers a whole lot of that in that ecosystem as well. I hope that explains a little bit of what we do and where we play into this ecosystem. Just to give you a little bit idea, in North America, I think our penetration tends to be close to 90%, like very deeply penetrated. Our ID actually becomes the backbone for most of this. Within the Europe and the Asian Asia ecosystem, you probably are looking close to like 30 to 40% penetrated is kind of where we are in terms of Gracenote actually finding its presence in helping the discovery across. We also have offerings in addition to content discovery for production houses as well. We have a product called Studio Systems that is used both by agents and studio houses to really kind of mix and match the talent, whether it is cast, crew, whatnot, for building the right kind of people to kind of create a successful project. So that's a little bit of some of the products that we have.
Great. Thank you for that comprehensive introduction, Funny. And of course, I'm really glad to hear about Gracenote and the kind of meaningful innovation is the company is driving, especially in an environment which is changing so rapidly. And with that, of course, the technological and digital landscape is also evolving pretty rapidly. So that level of foresight is definitely crucial, and I'm glad Gracenote is there to adapt to the change, actively shaping it, and reaching out to users and making content. More accessible and making content discovery and identification something which organizations definitely kind of lag behind with the growing amount of content that we have. With that foundation in place, I would love to dive a little deeper into your personal journey and contributions to Gracenote. You have been a technology leader over a long career, Funny, and you have built large, diverse, and high performing global teams. So it would be great if you could help us understand more about yourself. How has the journey been till date? What triggered your interest at Gracenote, and what exactly is your role towards the company?
No, I feel quite blessed in that regards. I think very few times you actually get to work with some amazing people, and sometimes I've been blessed to work with them repeatedly at multiple places as well. And My journey started in US after I finished my master's. First 10 years, I was actually on the graphics side of the world, CAD CAM for 3 years, virtual reality, delivering training simulations for US military, Homeland Security, and other civilian applications like fire inspectors and so on and so forth. It's pretty cutting edge because when you're looking at it, we were doing this. I was in the company from 98 to 2006, fifth engineer to join the company. So amazing strides there. After that, from graphics, a decade in graphics, I moved into fintech. I was with PayPal, which is actually, as you all would know, global powerhouse when it comes to payments. Was there with them for 12 years. It was actually with PayPal I shifted back after 8 years in US to India when we were starting the Bangalore center, because we wanted to kind of create a very strong innovative center here, which is on par with the offices we had in Bay Area. So that's what kind of got me to India. And then I made my home back in India again for the last decade. So another 4 years with PayPal, I led product and engineering there for some of their very, very key products. And then after that, I joined Flipkart. I was in e-commerce for about roughly 4 years. Led a pretty large part of the Flipkart ecosystem that included retail, pricing and promotions, their accounting, trust and safety, retail systems, marketplaces systems, and all of their planning systems. Pretty DS heavy, pretty right. I think pretty structural in Flipkart being what it is. I think had been blessed to kind of work in that area. Post that, I was CPTO at Pine Labs. Most people in India would recognize by the Pine Labs POS machines. We're also, Pine Labs was also into online payments and many other merchant services as well. So I was CPTO there, leading both product and technology. And most recently, a little less than a year ago, joined Gracenote kind of as their CTO. Trying to kind of take media into the new space that it's actually naturally evolving into, and helping Gracenote hopefully in that journey forward and continue to be the leader in that space.
Great, definitely. And we hope that too, Funny. And it's, we were very happy that your role is not just about steering strategy or execution, but also about driving more meaningful impact from within. And, your efforts are deeply embedded into the organization's larger mission and vision.
Mm.
Now, moving ahead, I think people are talking about a particular brand, for example, they are there talking. So with the proliferation of social media or blogs or podcasts and other media channels, it's getting harder for brands to keep up with all the places that mention them, and that's where media intelligence proves valuable. Now, I believe that media intelligence platforms today are more than just listening tools. They're complex, tech powered ecosystems that rely heavily on automation, machine learning, AI, real-time analytics, etc. And they're built not just to collect content, but to contextualize it, making discovery smarter and personalized, with aligned with human context. So to begin with, how would you define a modern media intelligence platform, and how has the role of technology evolved in this space?
No, that's such a beautiful and pretty dense question as well.
Mm.
So you can actually cut that from so many angles. One angle would actually be coming from the I mean, like how media is leveraged, how media is fostered. It's not like there is advertising is actually kind of a very, very, very key element there. Commerce actually tend to be a very key element, actually playing somewhere in the space of media, right? I think differently in different forums, we can tackle a little bit more about that. And then actually the whole element of people actually kind of finding the media that they want and that actually being really personalized to their tastes and their interests, and then actually being able to kind of reach across an extremely distributed and possibly even fractured environment, right? I think so there are multitude of aspects, right? Because you beautifully use the word contextual, right? Contextual actually kind of makes so much sense because if I am an advertiser and if I want to actually kind of place an advertisement, my ROI, my return on investment would be a lot higher if I'm actually able to tap into the context, tap into the mood, tap into what exactly kind of is happening, and then kind of place it very appropriately to the audience and where they are in terms of being able to anchor into their viewpoint at that juncture, right? Because of the content they're watching and all of that. That's contextual, for example. Contextual can also be like commerce, right? I think you're watching content and we all aspire, right? Whether it is actually kind of a beautiful city that we see kind of as part of the content, or actually some amazing clothing that we actually see the cast kind of wearing kind of in the content. There is contextual nature to it. There is desire associated with it. And you actually being able to kind of empower, say, for example, shopping with that sense of context is another element of contextual that is actually supremely powerful. Now, then there is the aspect of it's like, okay, I return home with after a long day, I'm actually looking for a specific kind of content, or actually something has been playing. This is one topic I wish actually kind of in the small little time that I have, I really want to kind of go like scan through all the news things out there, whether it is on Google, whether it is on MEPDs, wherever it is, actually find and actually kind of see what really played out on this event kind of thing, right? Because I'm a little bit, right, I think into it at this juncture. No matter how you actually kind of look um, at the meaning of context, the context of actually what's current, the context of actually kind of like for an advertiser or for a commerce aspect, the power of now AI in terms of allowing all of this to play out very, very meaningfully is actually causing for supremely great innovation playing out. And thankfully, we are actually very focused on empowering that for all of the ecosystem players and the consumers, and bringing that to bear.
Definitely. And I think that was a very fascinating breakdown, especially the way technology is reshaping the very foundation of how we collect, process, and act on media data. I think media intelligence is no longer just about monitoring headlines or tracking mentions. It's pretty evolved into the real time. It's insight driven, and it is empowering brands to make a more smarter and faster decisions. When we're talking about content discovery, I think personalization definitely plays an important role here. But despite the personalization efforts that every platform is making, content discovery is a problem that may worsen before it gets better. Now, because users are spending half an hour trying to decide what to watch on platforms like Netflix and Amazon Prime Video. And I would completely agree with that because I've also experienced that. And making this choice easier for the user should be a key area of focus for the industry going forward. And I know this fatigue of discovering content is one of the primary reasons why fast channels are gaining traction fast. So, how is content discovery such a critical challenge for media platforms today? And how do you think technology is bridging that gap?
Yeah. Now you're asking a question where Gracenote plays central to that aspect of it. See, truth of the matter is, and I guess we can actually almost break the journey of media pre-COVID and post-COVID also, right? I think many of our, or through and post-COVID, right? I think many of our watching patterns, I think the reach into what actually has happened, the amount of, the number of content producers that actually have come into the ecosystem on various forums, formats, and so on and so forth. It's actually moved very suddenly and very quickly kind of into the highest gear, and there is a lot of content proliferation, good content, mediocre content, right? I think relevant content, a lot of it actually kind of is there, and it is actually kind of true that there is a little bit of a content overload. And what is the, I mean, like, and for me to kind of swift through and kind of come to and kind of identify what actually is the right content for me, I think it can actually be quite challenging, especially because of the distributed and fractured nature of actually kind of where and how it is kind of getting created. Now, I'll actually speak to what actually kind of Gracenote does a little bit. We actually have something called as a TMS ID and a Gracenote ID in our ecosystem. This TMS ID, for example, in many markets actually has become the standard of communication between many players. The player here could actually be Amazon Fire Stick or a Roku, and actually a content producer, which might be an MVPD or Prime Video or actually Zio Hotstar, right? Regardless of actually kind of who the producer is, who kind of the aggregator distributor is of the content, when you actually are able to kind of use a specific identifier and people are actually able to kind of speak in a common language, suddenly you're actually going to be able to bring some level of structure to this fractured environment. And Gracenote actually comes central into that, actually as somebody that actually brings that structure to really be able to kind of allow multitude of players to communicate kind of in one universal language and still be able to kind of let visibility come to the various aspects of it. It is because of this today, whether you are actually turning on a Samsung Smart TV or whether you're actually kind of putting in actually kind of watching content on your Fire Stick or kind of through your MVPD setup box, your ability to really be able to discover content beyond and kind of in a meaningful manner is actually becoming possible because of this standard and the communication platform that we actually have been able to create for so many players in the ecosystem. And this is obviously step one, and then you bring kind of AI into it. You really can start kind of bringing personalization. You really can start understanding somebody's preferences, and then pair that up with actually kind of the available content and start kind of taking it further and further into a very, 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 very meaningful place. See, today we know, I mean, I think we are in the world of Chat GPT, Gemini, and so on and so forth, right? DeepSeek, right? In the way we are actually kind of accessing, in the way we are starting to search, in the way we are starting to discover anything. But there is actually some very interesting challenges even for these amazing LLMs, right? Because they go through their pre-training and fine-tuning. At certain points in time, fine-tuning is actually the way they kind of bring relevant aspect of it. But they happen, and after that, actually, they do have the web connectivity and kind of go and kind of search. But when you actually kind of are a player like Gracenote, that actually can bring kind of your enormous, vast data to the table as a RAG for these massive, for this discoverability to be that much more seamless even in a conversational aspect of it. All of this actually, again, kind of goes to the power of how this whole ecosystem is going to evolve over the coming years, and how players like Gracenote are actually going to be able to bring that structure and that shape to this proliferation, right? I think that is happening. So proliferation is good when it actually can be contained and can be taken advantage of. And our intent is to kind of be able to kind of help people do that.
Absolutely. And I think what you pointed out about technology being the bridge here really resonates, because I think it's no longer about simply pushing content. It's about surfacing the right content at the right time, tailored to each individual. And I think tech here is playing an important role, and enabling platforms to move beyond guesswork and work towards truly personalized experiences. And also, it's really exciting and fascinating to see how this shift is impacting not just user satisfaction, but also engagement metrics, content monetization, and even creator visibility. So thank you for breaking down that so clearly. Um, Moving ahead, I think with content, media content specifically multiplying every second, building scalable ingestion pipelines becomes non-negotiable. Now we are talking about parsing millions of data points from multiple formats and sources, tweets, articles, podcasts, videos, and often in real time. But scale isn't just technical. I think it's also about experience. So, how do we ensure that the platform scales its intelligence in a way that feels deeply personal with users? So, what are some of the key technical challenges CTOs usually face when building scalable media intelligence platforms?
No, it's again a beautiful question, right? And I just want to kind of for a moment, if you allow me, take you to 2005 2006 time when iPhone actually kind of launched.
Yeah.
iPhone is actually not the first smartphone that launched. There were many smartphones, actually quite capable smartphones in the ecosystem to that point in time. But when iPhone launched, it launched with a specific language. And that language actually is intuitive, so natural to how our brain behaves, how our behavioral patterns actually kind of exist. Somebody truly kind of studied what is natural to human, right? I think behavioral engagement, and Apple actually produced a product, right? And then obviously Android and so on and so forth. But it actually came from there, and that truly kind of changed the landscape of actually what has happened. And you saw how that really changed all of us, and actually kind of how and what we do, and probably connected into many aspects of it. Now, coming back into the question that you actually have asked and applying kind of the same paradigm kind of here, it is supremely important for the technology or for whoever the players are to kind of understand what is natural to human, and then actually be able to kind of decimate the information or kind of give the information in a form that is natural for consumption without overload, and allows for very easy decision making, and actually kind of the progression to the next steps. See, you don't want to tax yourself. Many times when you're actually coming to kind of look for media, either you're coming for information or you're coming for entertainment. Regardless, right, whatever you're actually kind of doing, the precision of actually what kind of comes in front of you, the ease with which you actually kind of start accessing it, will actually have a massive impact, right? And how natural it is. Now, fortunately, there is a revolution kind of happening right now in the world, right? I think, see, previously, I mean, if we go a decade or two back, even when we actually had to search something, we actually had to be a bit precise in what we are searching for, so that I think our hits are more meaningful. Now, I think whether we are searching on Google or whether we are going to kind of one of the, right, I think Gemini, ChatGPT, right, I think Claude, wherever we are actually kind of going into, right, I think today it's actually become truly conversational. Again, the intent of conversational is make it that much closer to how human behavior actually kind of is. All of these are pointers, all of these are advancements that actually kind of lend very well for us kind of bridging these gaps that we were actually kind of referring to, right? And technology is going to be a key role, but it's actually kind of the ecosystem coming and adopting these aspects of it.
Absolutely. And, I think it's clear that scalability isn't just about infrastructure anymore. I think it's more about managing the different aspects that come with it, whether it's data, content diversity, or even user expectations. And of course, today as users, we demand everything conversational. So anything robotic that comes to us, we kind of feel this is something that we shouldn't go ahead with, because we probably can find it very spammy that way. And of course, tech is also moving in that way and trying to make everything conversational so that they can, ensure that. That we are a part of it, and new platforms are amazing in terms of how they can adjust with the changing audience behavior, and of course it doesn't changes overnight.
I think you made some very, very nice points actually there, especially when you're talking about scale.
Yeah.
And I think you very nicely put it. There are two aspects to the scale, right? For all of us leaders, CTOs, or even any technology developer for that matter,
Yeah.
to kind of think about. One aspect of scale actually is, I think for us to be able to kind of support that demand kind of in
Yeah.
technical terms, in infra terms, in terms of actually kind of how would you kind of do it, which is the smartest way, how would you do it in a very cost effective manner while actually kind of doing this. Then there is the other aspect of scale, which is actually reach, right? Where, I mean, how many people are actually kind of using it? How easy are you making it? And how the reach actually kind of has quadrupled, which is kind of what I was using in the Apple example in terms of how reach of smartphones actually just taken off, right? So these two things brought together is basically right on two sides of the equation, well thought out and nicely solved for, is actually what's truly going to kind of help us go to new places and new innovations.
Definitely, I completely agree with you. And while we will go to new places, I think there are certain things that we might need to fix in terms of how we are going ahead. Because many sites offer personalized content selections, whether based on your browsing history, location, gender, and of course other data. The result is flood of articles or posts or content that supports our current opinions and perspectives to ensure what we enjoy, what we see. Now, even when a site is not offering specifically targeted content, we all tend to follow people whose views align with ours, right? And when those people share a piece of content, we can be sure it will be something we are also interested in. Now, that might not sound so bad, but filter bubbles create echo chambers. Now, we assume that everyone thinks like us and we forget that other perspectives also exist. So, what guardrails do you put in place to prevent filter bubbles or echo chambers in personalized content feeds?
No, it's actually like I think the layers in which you're thinking is just impressive, right? I think, and the questions what they're bringing to the table, and these are actually kind of very very hard realities that we're actually dealing with. I think even very interesting, right? I mean the echo chambers that you're talking about, the compartmentalization that is actually kind of happening, right? In the sense they probably were more moderates. Actually, it almost feels like a couple of decades ago to where there are today, and I think at some level this resonance effect that is happening in these echo chambers is actually kind of playing to, right. We keep listening to what we interested are. Actually, by the way, I keep telling myself, and I share this with my kids as well. Doesn't matter what my affiliations, natural orientations, and preferences actually are. I force myself to consume content even from newspapers and articles that actually kind of typically disagree with my type, because it actually keeps you grounded, right? It can't be real that one side is 100% true, the other side is 0% true, right? I mean, both sides actually are somewhere in between. And you being connected to what's meaningful actually depends upon how these echo chambers can actually be, right? Now, very interestingly, even with AI and advent of AI, I think one very big debate that is actually kind of playing out is the natural bias that actually can play into these, right? The bias actually kind of happens almost in these intelligent systems by the virtue of the information that's actually kind of fed into it. If you really want to be very mindful of actually kind of moderating the bias, then we actually have to be very mindful of actually the content that is going in the training, in the fine tuning, in the right. I think further multiple phases that actually kind of are going to happen kind of in creating intelligent systems. It actually has to be very very deliberate approach, right? As we take one's considerations into it, the system itself fundamentally actually being as honest as possible in terms of actually minimizing the bias shifts would actually start becoming very very important for these echo chambers not shaping up. It's a pretty hard problem, truth be told, right? Because you always have this very interesting conflict between losing an audience versus actually being what's good for the audience in terms of serving a broader content. If you serve content that is broader and they feel like some other person is serving content that is actually more precise to their taste, they might over time actually kind of prefer the other destination. So here I think it's a very interesting evolution and very interesting natural conflict that actually kind of exists for us to really kind of do the right, but actually also do it kind of in a very personalized manner such that it is still kind of the one of preference. Because with so many options available out there, it always comes down to the preference from the audience, right? From the user, from the consumer.
Definitely. And I think the entire I think not just media industry, but each industry is shaping its journey as per how we would be able to align themselves with what users want, their expectations, and what are their choices. So I think in an age where algorithms can shape not just what we consume but what we also believe, having some important safeguards become more not just technical decisions but I think ethical responsibilities as well. And of course, again, we have AI here that can just, move beyond optimization and, of course, start supporting broader social outcomes as well. And again, we definitely want to build trust and promote digital well-being. So definitely, it's a delicate line to walk, but not something that we cannot.
A very important one. And I think, and as I was suggesting in the conversation, at a system level, our choices, our approach actually has to be very, very deliberate to build minimum bias at a system
Right.
level. At a
Right.
preference level, at a user preference level, we
Yeah.
should actually be able to deliver that.
Yeah.
But I think that combination is probably what will take us to a more meaningful outcome. But it becomes that much important for us to have lesser bias kind of at a system level.
Definitely, I agree with you, Funny. Yeah, so I think that brings us to our last question, Funny, that, what are certain trends you think will shape the future of media intelligence platforms, or some advice that you would like to give to CTOs who are evolving around the media intelligence platforms or who want to build or scale their platforms?
Yeah, no, as I was saying, a couple of years ago, I would say, hey, there is a massive movement that is happening right now, and there is a bit of a FOMO for every technology leader out there, right? Am I going to be missing this boat? At this juncture, if you're not at the center of that play, maybe it's already a little too late, right? And with what's playing out right now in the evolutions of AI, it is actually going to have a supersized impact on the technology world in the way things are actually going to evolve, right? I think I'll just give you one very interesting example. I actually kind of like one of my dear friend's son, he actually wanted to kind of start off a startup. He was actually kind of wanted to kind of place an idea. He's not even a technologist, right? He's worked on product, right, as a product manager and all of that. And for him, when he was actually kind of showing this and was trying to seek my input, he used two different AI tools. One to kind of create the experience of the product that he was actually creating, another actually to create the backend kind of a node in terms of the services. And he actually brings it to the table. He walks me through all of this. And he says that, Uncle, I actually have done this by going through and kind of really detailing out the requirements in this manner and kind of putting it and then kind of researching on the tools that can be used to do it. Right now, I need a developer who can actually connect these two things together and make this to a working state than the proof of concept state they're in. It's actually amazing. I mean, the intelligence of the individual is just astounding. And you see that left, right, and center right now everywhere. But the fact that you could go that far, even without actually being a technologist, actually is telling of what actually kind of has transpired in our ecosystem today, right? I think over time, we are going to start moving to higher order and higher order challenges in terms of being able. It's a great thing, which actually means with the kind of optimizations, with the kind of efficiencies, with the kind of right AI innovations that are actually coming to us, right, in the form of copilots, this, that, we are in a world where what actually kind of took us months now probably will start happening in weeks. And it's a great time and space to be at, because the amount of difference that you can make back to the ecosystem, the size of the impact that you can actually make to the ecosystem is a lot larger, right? Let's actually kind of be right. I mean, this is a time where I actually hope every technology leader feels very, very like hungry for information, hungry for learning, right? I think like just tuned in very, very deeply into kind of learning what's the greatest and the latest things that are actually kind of playing out. Because I think the world is right now, I think the changes right now, the evolutions right now happening in this space are actually kind of on serious steroids, right? I think, and it's a great time. I think many evolutions are playing out. Keep your minds wide open. Stay connected to the shifts happening in the world. Be a constant learner, right? And actually have great people around you that actually kind of can switch their form to the changing world, right? I think amazing stuff will happen.
Definitely. And I think we are entering an era where the power of media intelligence isn't just in knowing more, it's knowing better. And that's what the CTO playbook is all about. It's about building platforms that are smart enough to find meaningful, fast enough to deliver in real time, and personal enough to matter to each individual user. So thank you so much, Funny, for taking all the time and effort to be on a podcast today and helping us understand and sparking some ideas as to how you can build and scale your platform to meet the growing demands of content discovery and personalization in a hyper connected world. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure having you with us on a podcast today, and it was lovely chatting with you.
No, thank you so much. Very important for all of us to kind of have these conversations, and deeply thankful to you in facilitating this, right? I think in such a constructive and deep manner. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Funny. Means a lot to us. So this is for our listeners. That wraps up today's episode of the Analytics Inside podcast. And so, I think to all the technology leaders out there, if you are managing a startup or scaling a global platform, the road to media intelligence is paved with intelligent architecture, ethical AI, seamless user experience, and above all, I think relentless innovation. So until next time, I am Priya Dayalani, and this is Analytics Inside podcast, where the future of tech meets thoughtful conversation. Thanks for tuning in. You can view and listen all our previous podcasts on Spotify and other leading platforms. Thank you so much.